would find it in two things. First, you'll talk about it in terms of transmission-based communication. And when we talk about transmission-based communication, we're only talking about 5 elements of the communication process. Sender, message channel, receiver, effect. Okay, and you could see it in this model of communication. So there's a sender, message, channel, receiver, and effect. So this would be very basic, and I think everybody who took a bachelor's degree in communication should know this by heart by now. So a sender is the one sending a message through a channel to a receiver, the person receiving it, and then effect. And that's why the boss saying that he is talkative and he can communicate well, then it doesn't really mean that he is effective in communicating because he is simply a sender. And there are uh, many other elements of the communication process that is there, and that's why sender is not enough to make it. So going back to this example, I showed this to many of our students, um, especially the millennials, because they have never seen this telephone in their life anymore. So it's kind of a guesswork for them. So this is a public payphone, circa maybe 1980s. You need to drop coins in order to use this telephone. Okay, because now we use the mobile phone, and we have never seen this anymore for the new generation. So maybe this is a mother and she has a message, maybe to her son. Maybe she wants to tell her son, please don't forget to drink your medicine. Okay, so that's her message. And her channel will be the telephone, and then the receiver's the son, and then the effect will be the son would take his medicine. So in this process, you look at the sender, message, channel, receiver, effect. And many people will say, so isn't it so simple what communication is? Because it's only message, channel, receiver, effect. But then, communication can get complicated, more and more complicated depending on the situation. For example, we are now in the midst of a pandemic, and we would like people to do social distancing, or we would like people to wear masks. And therefore, you have to think, who is the best sender for this? Is it a government official, or is a health official better as a sender of that message? What channels are better to be able to convince and reach out to people about the pandemic? Would social media be the best way? Because now you could not really go door to door. And then who's the receiver? And then because one message may not be able to be understood by all, because there are people living in the urban areas, people living in the rural areas, so, some people with different dialects and languages. So this makes it a little bit more complicated. So, but with this definition, you talk about simply a linear model, wherein you want to transmit something to somebody. Now, in the second definition of communication, we talk about it as meaning-based communication, because in this type of communication process, we're trying to create meaning between people. And that's why when I show this picture to some students, they usually think that this is something romantic. They think that it's about lovers or people showing affection to each other. However, this is a picture about a greeting, wherein in some cultures, when you greet somebody, you put your nose to the nose of the other person. Okay? In Thailand, you do the sawadee cup, and then in other countries, you shake hands. In Japan, you bow. In Indonesia, you put your hand across your chest. And that's why there are many ways of greeting people. And that's why in this communication definition, what is important is how mutual understanding takes place between participant A and participant B, wherein there is a continuous cycle of communication in order to reach mutual understanding between two people. And as you could see, mutual understanding is not 100% all the time between people. So in this kind of definition, what's more important are the text, signs, and codes, the people who read the text, what is their context, what is their culture, what is their experience, and what they understood from each other. Here is a picture of a marketplace. But for people who do not understand the context of it, they would not understand that this is a marketplace. So basically, those are the two main definitions of communication. One definition saying transmit. Communication is about transmitting messages from one to another. And the other one saying that communication is about creating meaning, creating mutual understanding between two people. In the first communication model, it doesn't mean to say that it would be understood, because simply this person sends a message to this and you don't really know whether that message was understood clearly. What was just understood is you want an effect to happen. For example, you want to sell donuts, you advertise, and you would like people to buy donuts. So you have that kind of two definitions. Now, one thing that people are asking, so is communication an art or a science? So there are choices. Is it A, an art, B, a science, or C, both? And what I get to see from the literature is actually it's both. Uh, it is an art because there is not one specific way to communicate. It is communication is very fluid and there are no rigid set of rules. But it is also a science because it is empirical. We need to use empirical data to be able to see whether we can communicate effectively or not. Um, and that's why you would see part of communication people this way. These are the artistic ones. They think out of the box. They express themselves in various ways. They do graphic design and all sorts because this is how they communicate. And some jobs will be graphic designers, art directors, photographers. So this is the artistic side of communication. They understand colors, they understand patterns, they understand how to put one shape with another shape, and that's why it's more of an art form. But then we also see communication as a science because we ask these questions: Where are we? Where do we want to go? How will we get there? How will we know we have arrived? So this really talks about how effective is your communication. So if you are spending a lot of money to advertise on YouTube or in social media, then you would have to know whether you get your money's worth. How many people are reached? How many people do you engage with? What are the platforms? What are the comments? And therefore, you have to see whether your communication processes are effective or not. In the same way, now it's a life and death situation with the pandemic. We want people to wear masks or to socially distance. So is our communication effective in making people change their behavior? Or maybe it's not. Then you have to do it in a scientific way. And that's why when we talk about communication as science, we see people with these kinds of jobs. They event planners, they're PR specialists, they are social media managers, etc., etc. And that's why when we talk about communication, we talk about the two sides of the brain. The side of the brain that caters to the scientific part of it, and then the side of it that talks about the artistic part of it. Now, looking at it in education, usually when we have communication degrees at the undergraduate level, many universities look at it as communication as art. Okay, some look at it as communication as science. But if you really want to develop the science part of communication, then you have to take a master's degree. And master's degree really talk about theories, talk about research, talk about how communication strategies, how to make communication effective. And that's why for people who are interested in communication, but in the science part, then take you take a master's in communication, and you can enroll in universities such as STOU or the university I'm from, University of Liberal Arts Bangladesh. But uh, our program is based here in Dhaka. STOU is an open university, so you can study anywhere you are if you take STOU. So let's look at the science part of communication. So we look at communication as being part of the social science. And when we talk about the social science, we talk about a body of knowledge about human behavior. So sociology is there, how humans behave as groups. Psychology is there, how humans behave individually. We have economics, study of human wealth, linguistics, human languages, you study that. Anthropology is there, studying human culture, and then communication is there, how humans communicate with one another. And that's why you have this communication being part of the social sciences, and it's part of communication science. So there are two branches of science. One is the natural sciences, and the second one is the social sciences. And communication belongs to the social sciences because it studies human society and social relationships. It includes fields like economics, political science, law, geography, history. We use scientific methods, and our students can become linguists, historians, journalists, etc. So we have all these things in communication science, and a master's degree is a very good way to do that. Now, since we talk about communication being a social science and science being a body of knowledge, therefore in communication we also have a body of knowledge. And how do we create this body of knowledge? We do it through scientific inquiry. Okay, so like every communication scholar, like me, Dr. Kamal Rat, we have to do research. We have to do scientific inquiry, and we need to produce knowledge. And based to say it simply, when we talk about the stages of producing knowledge or the stages of scientific inquiry, we go back to Thomas Kuhn, when he talks about theory, questions, observation. So these three things are the ways to produce knowledge. So let's give an example. So way back in the past, maybe in the 1930s, and if you look at it in the American context, cinema was not very old at that time. It was rather new. And they wanted to know how they can make money by advertising in cinema. And therefore, what they try to experiment on is that if we show something to the cinema audience while they're waiting for the film to start, if we show them buy popcorn, advertising on popcorn, will they buy popcorn? So that was the question that advertisers had, going back to the Thomas Kuhn stages of inquiry. So the question is, will people buy popcorn in the cinema if you show it? And would this buying of popcorn be immediate? And what they found out was that, yes, it was effective. people buy popcorn if you show popcorn in the cinema, in the screen before it starts. And therefore, they said, okay, let's do another experiment. Let's now show Coca-Cola. So now they showed drink Coca-Cola, uh, pause and refresh. Okay, so now they're saying, would this be effective if we now try to show uh, before the movie starts, people will buy Coca-Cola? And they said, yes, it happened. People bought Coca-Cola before the movie started. And therefore, you could see the question and then the observation. The question, will they buy popcorn? Will they buy Coca-Cola? And then the observation is, yes, they are buying popcorn. They're buying Coca-Cola. And then there was this very important thing that happened in 1938. There was a radio program called War of the Worlds. And in this radio program, there was a drama wherein they were trying to explain that the people from Mars, okay, or aliens were trying to invade New York City. So it was just a plot for a drama in radio, and allegedly a lot of people believed that it was true. And therefore, you see headlines coming out in the newspaper, fake radio war stirs terror throughout the US. And then people started to panic. And they were thinking, how come this happened? People believe that such a ridiculous plot actually happened in New York City, and people were afraid and they panicked. Well, that was, allegedly. Uh, and therefore, when this happened, people began to theorize. So this is where the theory came, that they say maybe communication or mass media is like a hypodermic needle. And therefore, saying that it is all powerful, if the media says something, therefore it must be true. And that's why it's like a needle, and inside are the messages, and then all these messages gets into the head of an individual. So if mass media says buy Coca-Cola, then it is so powerful people will buy Coca-Cola. If media says buy popcorn, then it is so powerful people will buy popcorn. If media says that there are people or there are aliens from Mars invading New York City, then they will believe that it is true. Media said it, therefore it is true. And they came up with the one-step flow model, and that's why media goes directly to the audiences, and media has this power over the audiences. Okay? So for a long time, people believed that this was true, that mass media was so powerful and that audiences will believe it. And that's why there was this man called Paul Lazarsfeld who tried to use the all-powerful media effect to be able to convince, he was an election campaign manager. And he was trying to make his candidate for mayor in one of the cities in New York to win the election. And therefore, what he wanted was, yes, I want my candidate to be elected. I will use the media to convince everybody. But what happened was that his candidate lost. And therefore, Paul Lazarsfeld began thinking, how come my candidate lost? I thought media was all powerful. And therefore, because of this question, he started doing research, he started doing surveys, trying to see whether media really affects people that way. And the result of his survey showed that there was something called opinion leader. And opinion leaders are people whom you ask advice from. So, for example, you need some advice. Who should I vote for? for the election. So sometimes I go to somebody that I know is learned or intelligent or informed. And therefore, I ask that person, uh, is who should I vote for? And the person you approach is usually an opinion leader. And therefore, what Paul Lazarsfeld found out is that mass media does not directly go to the people. It passes through an opinion leader who says things now to the people. And therefore, it was not a direct link as before, but now it's a two-step flow wherein it goes through opinion leaders. And therefore, his candidate lost because opinion leaders did not believe what he was putting out in the media. And therefore, if we go back to scientific inquiry, he gave us another theory or a model, which is the two-step flow model. So again, from observation, his candidate failed, to a question, why did my candidate fail? Why isn't media all powerful anymore? To the theory, yes, media is not all powerful because there is an opinion leader that goes in between the media and the people who are opinion leaders. And therefore, when we talk about communication theory is simply a construction, it's simply a scholar's construction of what communication is like. No single theory will ever reveal the truth. Theories are created by people, they are not ordained by God. And therefore, a theory is just how a scholar sees the communication process from his particular perspective, from his particular situation, from his particular problem. And therefore, you would see that there is nothing to be frightened about when we talk about communication theories and perspectives, because theories are not way, way, way up there that they are like truths that cannot be rebutted, that cannot be modified, that you cannot challenge. In fact, theories should be challenged all the time. And therefore, anybody who has particular interest in communication, especially those if once you study in the masters, you can challenge any theory out there that has been given to us time and time again. Okay, we can challenge all these theories, and that's why when we look at it in the ASEAN level, and even at an individual level, you can have your own theory of communication as long as you follow the basic principles of inquiry. Okay, questioning, observing, theorizing. Okay, so now let's move to the four perspectives. Now, when we talk about communication perspectives, it draws a lot from the definitions that I have given a while ago, because there are four perspectives. The first one is a transmissional perspective. When we talk about the transmissional perspective, it is simply linear sending and receiving of messages. Second is interactional perspective, wherein there is a feedback. Then the transactional perspective, wherein there is shared meaning. And then the behavioristic perspective, which is stimulus and response. So let's try to look at it one by one. So a very good model for the transmissional perspective is the Shannon and Weaver mathematical model. So in the Shannon and Weaver mathematical model, we have an information source. Okay, the information source is a person. Okay, so it can be me. And then I have a message, but then I use a transmitter or a device to send my message. So the transmitter can be my cell phone. The cell phone sends signals. Then the signals are received by a receiver, and maybe the receiver can be Dr. Kamalrat because I called her on my cell phone. And no, the receiver is her device. I'm sorry. So the receiver is her device, her cell phone, and then the message reaches the destination. The destination is Dr. Kamal Rat, okay, the receiver, the person. So the information source and the destination in the mathematical model of Shannon and Weaver are people. The transmitter and the receiver are the communication devices. Okay, so it is just me sending a message using my cell phone, signal received by the cell phone, and reaching Dr. Kamal Rat. Okay, but of course we know that there is a threat of noise because the noise can, destroy the signal, and that's why sometimes we cannot hear people properly on our devices. Okay, so you have this. So in this way, communication is just transmissional. I just want to transmit something to reach the destination. I don't care if she will talk back to me. I don't care if she understood it. What I only care in this situation is my message reaches a destination, and that's why it's just called transmissional perspective. Now, if you now go to the interactional perspective, because when we talked about interactional perspective a while ago, we were talking about a feedback. And therefore, if you go to a model, sender, message, encoding, channel, receiver, decoding, there should be a feedback. So it means that Dr. Kamal Rat should have at least spoken back to me and told me what she thought about what I said. Okay? So, for example, like in the example of the mother calling the phone, the payphone to her son, the mother told the son, please don't forget to drink your medicine. And then the feedback of the son would be, I already did, mom. So there is an interaction that took place and it's understood. Okay. So the next one is transactional perspective. And when we talk about the transactional perspective, there should be shared meaning between two individuals. And that's why the model goes this way. A person, okay, sends a message to another person who decodes it, interprets it, and then encodes a message. So it's a circular model, and this is the Schramm's circular model of communication, wherein there is a constant exchange of messages between two people so that they can understand what they're talking about. So, for example, if you would like some people to prevent uh, getting the coronavirus, maybe a transactional way is better so that you can explain it very properly to the other person. So that's why certain campaigns or certain strategies need to be transactional because a lot more has to be discussed, especially about things that people are not so clear about. And the last perspective is more of the behavioral perspective. So in the behavioral perspective, what is important is that there is a change in the behavior of people. So for example, you would like people to change, um, maybe you want to teach people to wash their hands often. What are the benefits of hand washing? So behavior change can be as follows. Before they're unaware, then they become aware. Before they're not concerned, now they become concerned, like in the Black Lives Matter. Uh, Before they don't have knowledge, then they become knowledgeable. Before they have no motivation to change, now they're motivated to change. They modify their behavior, and then they sustain the change behavior. And of course, this can happen if we have effective communication, if we have very good enabling environments like policies, community values, human rights, and then there are user-friendly, accessible services and messages. And of course, we have channels of communication, mass media, community networks, interpersonal. Now, here in Bangladesh, we have a refugee, we have a refugee camp down south. near the border with Myanmar. And we have 1 million refugees there. Now, we are afraid here that the refugees will catch the virus. And once it catches the virus, because it's a very congested place, it will be spreading all throughout and a lot of people will be affected. And therefore, we have to teach them to act in certain ways or to behave in certain ways to be able to prevent the spread of the virus. And that's why hand washing is one of the ways wherein they have to do often. So we have to tell the refugees, you have to wash your hands often. And they would only be able to do that if there are also enabling environment wherein water should be accessible, soap should be accessible. There should be effective communication for it to happen, wherein they should have mobile phones, or we have the miking system wherein somebody goes around with a megaphone explaining these things to people. And that's why you have this kind, because the focus here is not really about mutual understanding or about transmitting or about getting feedback. What's important here is behavior change. And that's why that's the fourth perspective. And that's why when you see social distancing, this is actually a behavioral change, because usually people are not so physically far from each other. Especially here in Bangladesh, physical distancing is, very close. This is a country with a high population density, and people are used to being in crowded situations. And that's why we have to explain the importance of social distancing and to change the behavior of being too close to each other. And this is what's important in the behavioral perspective of communication. So I'll be just ending here with some takeaways. First, there are two main definitions of communication, that transmissional, information transmission, and meaning creation. Communication is both art and a science. Communication is part of the social sciences and follows the method of scientific inquiry. And it will really help you a lot to know communication as science if you take a master's degree. And then communication theory is nothing to be afraid of, because it's just a scholar's construction of what communication is like. But that construction, of course, followed scientific inquiry. And communication has four main perspectives, because some scholars look at it in the transmissional perspective, some look at it in the interactional perspective, some transactional, and some behavioral. If you want to have a career in international organizations doing communication for development, then usually it's the behavioral perspective that you need to be zeroing on. If you're trying to have a career in advertising, it's more of the transmissional. And then if you're more of a PR person, public relations person, then a transactional perspective is important here. So this is, just the takeaway. So I will be ending my presentation here. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Jude. Yes. Thanks for your overview of the scenario of communication theory and concept, and also the perspective. And I would say that it's kind of the main perspective of communication. And not only that, you also have a takeaway home, right?
Yes.
So it's kind of very, very lovely conclusion. So I think that we open the floor for all, because we have some question. Ajahn Dalalat, do you have any question from the floor, please? Some from the Facebook or what? Ajahn Nilampai, you have some question?
Maybe, probably, I think this is the question from the Facebook. I can read it out, so then Dr. Jude can answer. The question is, do you have any evidences showing communication failures which the communication experts have?
Communication careers.
Yeah. Do you have any evidences showing communication failures which
Ah,
the communication experts have? That's challenging.
communication failures.
Yes.
Failed attempts at communication. Okay.
Even.
Uh,
Yeah.
well, uh, well, I think, if you look for communication failures, there will be so many if you search it on Google. Uh, and you could see this in, when we talk about communication also, there are different fields. So there is a field of communication for development, there's a field for public relations. So uh, I'll give one example of a communication failure. Before I was a research fellow at Kasetsart University, so I was with Kasetsart University Research and Development Institute. Okay, and I was doing some field work, and I went to the province of Chainat in central Thailand. And when I was doing my field work there, I chanced upon a meeting of somebody from the health ministry. There was a young man in the health ministry, and he was talking to all these women in the village. And the topic was about breast cancer. And he was talking about how the women can prevent the breast cancer. And the women were not taking this young man seriously. In fact, they were laughing and laughing at the back
Right.
while this young doctor was talking. And then the young doctor was getting, he was not happy about the situation because why are they laughing at me? Then he asked them, oh, why are you laughing at me? I'm talking about something very serious. And then the women said that uh, they would prefer if somebody else talked to them about breast cancer, if a female doctor would be the one to talk about breast cancer, then it would be better for them because other things enter their mind when the young male doctor was talking to them. So you see, in development work, sender is so important what to choose. In public relations, we see a lot of disasters. For example, when airplanes crash, how would the company handle it? How would the company try to empathize with the people? How fast should they respond? And that's why we see a lot of failures in communication. Same with oil spills. When there's an oil tanker, spread oil, there's a hole in the hull and oil spreads, then it becomes an environmental disaster. There's so many communication failures, and I think there will be more communication failures than successes in
Sure.
reality because that's how we learn. We observe, and then why did we fail? Then, and the example I gave of Paul Lazarsfeld, it was a communication failure because his candidate failed to get elected in the town of Almira. And he learned from that experience and came up with a new model of communication at that time, the two-step flow model.
Right, right. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. Maybe I can have like a one more following questions. You're mentioning about the behavioral perspectives, right? Which is, for example, like if let's say a group of people, let's say people smoke, the smokers, and we want them to quit smoking, right? And then we try to use the communication to change their behavior, like not to do something. But then, what if the case is about, for example, a person we are trying to tackle the belief. If a person using, let's say, the ivory amulet, because they believe that the amulet going to give them the power of protection or make them feel powerful. But at the same time, we want to conserve the elephants. So make sure that they won't be cut or don't be killed in order just to get the ivory. So how can, from your perspective, how can you use communication to like tackle this issue instead of instead of using the ivory amulets? Can they use something else? Because this is something that linked to the people belief, which is very hard to change, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Many environmental organizations like the World Wildlife Fund,
Yes.
WWF, they try to tackle this issue of what's this poaching and trading of
Yes.
wildlife products.
Sure.
Uh, and to some extent, it was successful because many countries in ASEAN have laws wherein we cannot trade in wildlife products anymore. But and that's why it was successful in that. But then we know that it's still happening, and now it is done illegally uh, because there is this demand and supply. Uh, People want to buy the product, and it's not only for the amulet; it's also the tiger, and also the rhino horn. Even if there is like the rhino horn, there is proven scientifically there is no medicinal value to add in the
Sure.
horn. People still put that there. And
Mm.
they have tried so many methods. So, for example, they use, like, for example, they look at the sender. Who should we use as sender? And then they try to use celebrities.
Mm.
So we see for a while, Jackie Chan was talking about this, and then some other ASEAN celebrities from Malaysia, from
Mhm.
Indonesia. We make use of ambassadors,
Yeah.
so to be able to use it. But then it's not enough because you have to see if we are, if we are the environmental organization and we are sending messages, it
Mm.
is also true that the traders are sending their own messages to the consumers, and they
Exactly.
are and they are giving false information so that their trade can continue. The same thing with the smoking example you gave. Smoking already, advertising of smoking has been banned. We already advertise smoking in such a way that it is very graphic, wherein we really show people with the disease, as a scare tactic to smokers. But then you see, smoking has not really declined. And because if you look at it from what the tobacco companies are doing, the tobacco companies are doing a lot of public relations work. They are doing a lot of contests, competitions, nothing to do with smoking. It's just getting their name out there and
Mm.
trying to project. And they do free concerts.
Mm.
They make it look elitist. They go to dormitories in schools. They target the young because they know the young people are more vulnerable to their messages. So you could see a push and pull between these, and that's why it will continue to be a struggle like this, because it's not only the development organizations that are doing very good communication. It's also the tobacco companies, and they're hiring the best people and paying them a lot of money. And that's why
Sure.
very good strategies as well.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you very much. So now I'm going to give time to other students and other audience here to ask questions as well.
Yes, I think that I was, yes, Kunwala, yes, please.
Good evening, professors. I have some questions to ask you. I think the perception of the receiver is important for an effect that follow the sender demand. So could you please explain the relationship between media literacy and communication, please?
Okay. Well, that is very true. Uh, the receiver's characteristics are very important for proper reception of messages. And that's why if you look at the model of Berlaw, Ricardo Berlaw was the one who mentioned the elements of the communication process: sender, message channel, receiver. Okay, he did not talk about effect, but sender, message channel, receiver. And he talked about the characteristics of a sender and characteristics of a receiver. So a receiver or a sender has a socio-demographic characteristic. So it depends on the age group, it depends on the education, it depends on the income, it depends on the religion, it depends on many factors, whether he lives in the urban area or the rural area. So you see this kind of uh, that's important. Another characteristic that they talk about is more of the psychological characteristic, wherein they talk about the personality of the person, whether he's extrovert, introvert, uh, open or close-minded, uh, what's it, carefree or very serious. So these things really affect the reception of the messages. So, and that's why when people try to strategize now, when they do a communication, they study the receiver a lot. They try to see whether, who is my target audience. So, for example, I have a product. Who's my target audience? Then I try to study segregation of the market. And that's why you see this a lot in marketing communication. They try to analyze audiences in different ways. And that's why also digital technology has a way to do it. That's why they gather information from all of us. They see what we look in our Facebook. They see what we gather in our when we do our Google searches. And that's why you would notice that certain hotels are already advertising to you because you were clicking about you wanted to go to Singapore, and then now hotels in Singapore are, and that's why there is a lot of science into studying receivers' perspectives, and it is really important, and that's why, it is more of the communication as science part. Okay, thank you.
So I have the last questions. In the future, if we use fully AI technology in communication, like a science fiction movie which we used to watch before, do you think it is possible if we communicate with AI? Will communication theory and perspective be changed in the future?
Yeah, actually, you're talking about something very controversial right now. Actually, when I attended the AMIC conference, I think last year, it was held here in Chulalongkorn University, or 2 years ago. It was held here. And that was one of the topics that was being discussed about artificial intelligence. And would artificial intelligence replace certain professions in communication? And that's why I think the theme of the conference is, are we still human? Okay, because they were trying to play on that artificial intelligence, saying that, yeah, students don't need to know how to write anymore because AI can do it. AI can replace journalists. They don't need to know grammar anymore. And that's why even if we start writing using Microsoft Word, and even if we write our emails, we see that there are corrections already to our grammar
Yeah.
being suggested and all that. Yes, so yes, it's true that AI will play a very important role in communications in the future. But of course, AI cannot do everything.
Mhm.
Humans are still there to do something. Maybe AI can do things that you can give algorithms to. but they would not be able to do the part of strategies and all that. But maybe in the future they will. But anyway, it's up to that point at the moment.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
The chat, you are going to talk?
Yes, yes. I have some question to ask. I would like to know which communication theory is the best to describe situation in 5G era. What do you think and why?
5G era.
Yes.
Okay. Well, Bangladesh will have its 5G next year. Okay, so we're not experiencing 5G now. But there are many communication theories that deal with communication and technology. There are models called social information processing models. Uh, but you know, uh, but when you talk about communication and technology, one way to look at it is really looking at how people process the information, because it's now different from interpersonal. Because when we have interpersonal communication, it's easy, right? We can see the face of the person, we can hear the tone of the voice of the person, and this gives us a lot of clues about the person's disposition, the person's sincerity. So you have a lot of clues that are easy. But now, once you use the technology and you're not seeing the person anymore, and of course, the sense of touch is not also there, because in interpersonal communication, there's also touch that can happen. Nonverbal communication goes along with the verbal communication. But when you go to information processing in the 5G era, it is now mediated by the use of the device, which may be a computer or now usually the mobile phone. And in this situation, people need to compensate somehow the lack of that human touch. And therefore, this model came about to look at how competent are people in analyzing and detecting social cues. Can they still detect as good as interpersonal when people speak? Because uh, But okay, so that's one side, it's the processing of the information. But there are also many sides to communication technology. And that's why you see a resurgence in information, media, and information literacy. Because of the rise of communication and technology, you see the rise of cyberbullying, you see the rise of um, fake news, disinformation, malinformation. So that's also one area that is being studied in communication technology. Another area that's being studied is about the digital divide, because it is also dividing societies into the information rich and information poor. So that's also one way it's being looked at. I actually have done extensive studies in digital divide here in Bangladesh, especially looking at the way ICT or information communication technology has affected women, uh, you know, women and women's empowerment, because many women still do not have in their possession the device that they need to, and the men usually control their usage of the device. So because of the device, it's uh, creating a gap between men and women in the country in terms of digital technologies. So yes, the 5G era, we can think about it in terms of information processing, which is a good model because many people want to advertise, many companies want to advertise using 5G. There are new ways to do advertising many ways to make people behave differently. So that's one, but also there's the literacy element to it, and then also the digital divide aspect to it. So you have all these things when you talk about the 5G era.
Thank you very much.
I think we have the question from Connie, right? Connie, are you a great communicator, Connie?
Yes.
Okay.
Good evening,
Please.
Professor Jude. Yes. In any communication periods, in any communication process, communication can be effective in the audience or receiver who have developed themselves or communication skill, including media literacy. On the other hand, if the audience or receiver lacking in awareness and communication skill, what is a strategy will we have to make a communication more useful for the receiver or the audience? Thank you.
Yes. This is actually the challenge we have as communication people. We have to really understand who our audiences are. Not all audiences have the proper communication competence. And that's why they will not be able to understand you if they have some, uh, if they have some incompetence there. But well, talking about uh, communication competence is very important, especially to be able to become successful in your career, no matter what it is. If you want to be a successful lawyer or a successful doctor or a successful architect, engineer, you have to be good in communication and you should have a level of communication competence. And that's why when you talk about uh, ministries of education, or University Grants Commission, or those in charge of regulation of education in your country, they would talk about 21st century skills. So these are the skills that are needed by the population in order to survive and thrive in the 21st century where we are in. And therefore, one of the 21st century skills is actually communication skills. We have to train all our people to be good in speaking, writing, uh, listening. That's very important, reading. We have to train our people to be computer literate. These are also 21st century skills. So that's really essential because we have to bring everybody up to that particular level. And what's also happening now is in ASEAN, there is a standardization that's happening for quality assurance in education in the ASEAN region, and that's the reason why the Philippines had to change their secondary school system, and they added 2 more years because before the Philippines we graduate from high school 2 years earlier than the people from Thailand, and that's why there was some sort of inequity there because in Thailand or Indonesia, 12 years elementary or primary to secondary school. But the Philippines just had it 10 years. And that's why they had to change it. That's why in ASEAN, there is a standardization that needs to happen. And in the standardization, the 21st century skills should be there, and the communication skills, computer literacy skills would be there. And that is important because what ASEAN envisions next is to have free movement of labor, free movement of students. And that's why it is important to talk about these things at an ASEAN level. Uh, and that's why I'm glad that you asked the question about communication skills, because this is really important now, uh, not only for individual people, but for ASEAN as a whole, how ASEAN will continue growing and progressing depends on this.
Thank you very much.
Ajahn Pami, you have some question? Okay. So I think that beside from the concept, the perspective, the theories, and we need to use both art and science to collaborate, kinds of. And then the most important is now is the context and the culture. So that's why this is the reason why we have set up this program, because we see that one among the main ingredients that can make communication effective is the context, the phenomenal, the that Dr. Jude talk about the how can we use communication into our daily life. Communication have to be related to our daily life, but like now daily life become to be more on the phenomenal, to be more on situational, to be more on contextualization. Like you mentioned about the 5G, the AI, or kind of that. And then for example, for the case of the COVID-19 pandemic, COVID-19, people, our ASEAN people keep doubting that why the US people don't wear the mask, kind of that. And so this kind of contextualization, this kind of culture or kind of that. So this is the main factor that Dr. Jude, you will be very honored and kind to share with us for the next Sunday about how important of the contextualization of culture, cross culture, internationalization, communication will be can affect to the kinds of effective communication. So the any else question for the Dr. Jude for tonight? Chandalalat, do you have something else for Dr. Jude, please? No? Ajahn Pami, you have? Ajahn June, you have something else? So next week will be more exciting. Dr. Jude, is this really a very comprehensive scenario for us for tonight? So the just some question to Kunwala that if in case that there is a crisis happening up immediately, how can the robot or how can the AI confronting that one, right? So we need human being, right? So that's kind of, so okay, kind of. So the on behalf of our program tonight, we got a lots of a lots of audience that are very curious to see you, Dr. Jude. Your fame is very well known. We are very honored to have you with us. You are a man of ASEAN. I was saying that you work very hard in the Filipino. That's your land, motherland, right? And then you work a lot in Indonesia, and right now you work a lot in Bangladesh and many country else. So thanks to share with us. So I think that the next Sunday would be very fun and very fruitful. Thank you very much. Salamat po.
Yeah. Okun ka?
ขอบคุณค่ะ
Thank you very
สารพัด
much.
ผม thank you thank you bye 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 สวัสดีค่ะ okay so we will end up our live session now, and then we'll coming up into our room, please. Yes. Okay. Any reflection for tonight? For tonight, Dr. Jude has shared with us about this issue will be talked more in our class before we have our exam, about the scenario of communication, the track of communication, and in each track of communication, for example, like we have development communication, we have mass communication, we have communication arts. In each particular track of communication, they will have their own They have their own theories, perspective, and currently they have the new track. That is kind of ICT or the new media. We used to say that is the new media track, but right now it's not new media anymore. It is the current media. That is ICT. So like you might know about some kind of the technology accepted models or technologies diffusion kind of that. So this kind of model and theory will be shared with you during the wrap up before we have the final examination. So we have a big umbrella, we have the perspective, we have the model, we have the theories, kind of that. So for tonight, would you like to repeat something about what you have earned? What 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 exactly communication? Do you agree that communication is an art or communication is a science or is both? Communication is art and science or not? What your perception in that? You agree with that or not? That what is your reflection about perspective of communication? Kind of that. So let's share your idea, please, so you can talk more. Yes.
Yeah.
Over.
Okay. Let's.
Okay. I'm okay.
You're okay.
I yes, I agree with Dr. Jude teachings. Is 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 both of the science and art, because sometimes we use art to communication with other people, but we have to think about the science like psychology, like strat, something like that. We have to mix it up together with art and science to communicate with people. Not to be a sender and receiver. Maybe we talk to the group of people. Maybe we talk to the many people, like we announcements. We have to use the science to understand
Yeah.
them.
Yep. You just make just kind of very tangible, very clear example between the President of America, Mr. Trump, right,
I
and
no,
Mr. Obama.
yeah,
It's very clear difference between these two speaker, two sender, right?
yes,
Have that. So meaning that and some of the example of our representative uh, what you เขาสสว่าไงนะอาจารย์แหม่มสส
candidate,
เอ่อ
candidate.
the
No, member of parliament.
Oh, member.
member of parliament that you can see that many of them who has a very well communication skill, it seems to be more
Yes,
benefit, right? And
yes,
then that is the ask to communicate. And then if he can add up kinds of sign process to convey the message in a more effective way, in a more scientific process, that a parliament member would be the outstanding one, the successful one. Yes, kind of that. So meaning that the ask to communicate can be built up. It's kind of is this a skills? It can be trained, right? But for the sign, for example, like audience studies, behavior studies. So this kind of we need to study in a scientific way, kind of that. Yes.
Mm. Yeah, I think
so yeah,
sorry. Please go
please,
ahead.
please. I have some event that I have been command and control the recruit or the new soldier. Yes, I just put the order to them, and I think this is a communication or not. I just put the order and the soldier obey my order. This is the effect that the order obey my order. But my order is like in law, I have a power to
Yeah.
give them an order. So not feedback, not effect from. So is that the communication or not? Is it one-way communication, right?
If you don't mind, I think this is one kind of communication, because within your context, you don't need their opinions, right?
Yeah.
You need them to listen to you and do whatever you ask them to. So
Yes.
that's it. It's not just like a participatory consultation process. That would require like a different process of communication. But within your context, this one, and that's the way that you have to do. So I think it's understandable.
Yeah.
And then I add up, Chandalalat, is this your example is very reflecting for the tonight, for perspective tonight. You are using the first one, just transmit, just order.
Yeah.
Everyone have to listen to you, no feedback. I just
Yeah.
order, so it's just transmission model. That's the first perspective, right? And then when you study more and more in depth of communication theories, you will see that in communication there also the categorized to be communication type, รูปแบบการสื่อสาร communication type. So communication type like you use is top down or formal communication. Formal communication like the boss talk to the boss talk to the soldier or kind of so that is the top down. That is a formal. And then the second is informal, right? Formal, informal, and then personal communication, interpersonal communication, and then like we are here, we are group communication, or we can click communication. And then you are working under the Navy in Singapore, you are working in the hospital, that is organizational communication or working communication. And then corporate communication. And then Ajahn work in the UN, so she is working under the international communication kind of that. So for tonight, Dr. Jude has just give you some quick overview to let you know that in communication we cannot just only use communication as only. So in communication we have three main tracks. The first one is communication as, right? So you need to use us to deliver, to transfer your message. For example, like the deal microphone, like Mr. Note deal microphone, the speech, the speech show, the talk show, all kind of that. That is the communication arts. And then the second track is mass communication. Mass communication is kind of television, advertising, public relation, kinds of that. So that's how we transmit our message to the mass of the people. Kind of that. And the third one is we call that development communication. Development communication, some people say integrated communication. So we integrate all kinds of mass com and com arts, right? To integrate and design in a specific way, specific target group, specific time frame, kind of that. So by this part, we have some wrap up for you. So you need to know that in the world of communication, just see the scenario of that, and then the perspective, and then in each perspective, they have the type of communication, and in that type of communication, they also have some specific theories and model in that one. And then it seemed to be like complex, but actually it's not. Communication is skill. It could be learned, right? Kind of that. But Like Dr. Jude mentioned at the beginning that once we talk about theory, people say, wow, it's boring, it's difficult. But he's saying that theory is a set of idea that human being or the scholar are setting up. Like our previous king, King Rama the Nine, he also set up the new theory, right? Theory mind, kind of that. New theory, that the theory that is like a cloud theory. Is the theory that he keep working for his people at the cloud level, and then he can synthesize and sum up to be the new theory of the king. Have that. So meaning that theory is not kind of that. It's kind of theory can be earlier, but it's mostly correct because it has been passing the process of proving itself until it's quite finalized. For example, so that's the theory, but it depends on the context. Like some professor, some of Thai professor, she's very curious about the diffusion theory, the how you use communication to transfer the innovation. Average M. Rogers said there is 5 steps. You need to use 5 steps before you transfer any innovation. But in Thai context, they're saying that there is research saying that we need only 3 steps, kind of that. So this kind of thing, it depends on the culture, it depends on the context, it depends on the phenomenon, kind of that. So this is the how, yes. And then the but anyhow, there is some fundamental skill and fundamental what you call it, fundamental laws that or communicator or communication field need to do it. For example, like when people ask you, Connie, what is your major? What is your study? What is your program? Connie, what is your program? Connie said, Nitesat, communication. And then what's up? What's next? People will automatically expect, right? Suchat, what is your field of study? Communication. So meaning that, what is the fundamental law of you? They're saying that if you are a communicator, if you study communication, they can just give you the microphone. You can do everything. Speak, talk in a professional way. Is it true? That is why Dr. Chu said, are you a great communicator? So meaning that is a communicator is not just talkative, right? You talk a lot, but it's not, it cannot create any mutual understanding, kind of that, right? So just taking note that once we study communication on Nitesat, we need to skill ourselves first at the beginning. Okay, Mr. Walla, just convey this message. You are perform very well with confidence because this is your expertise.
Yeah.
Have that, right? So this is the how. So Connie, you may used to be a nurse in your bachelor degree, but like now you are communication field. You are a communicator, but don't be panic, don't be nervous, because this is the first semester, right? So for the second semester, you will be master. Master mean what? Master of communication, master program in communication. So meaning that you are master in communication. Like Ajahn Dalalat is master in communication, right?
I think just like when we have the firm foundation of the communications and we have the skills, so no matter issues that we have to tackle, whether it's environment, children's human rights, we can also like use the skill that we have to, like, how can I say, handle or cope with those issues and ensure that we use the communication to enhance the sustainable development goals at the end of the day. So communication skill is really the foundation. So no matter fields that you are in, like a nursing, medicals, or even like a security, I mean, those are the subject that we can always learn, and we have to learn anyway because we can't stop learning. Yeah, but
Yeah.
but we need to be really firm. We need to be really like a communication professionals. So and we can handle everything. That's just from my experience.
Yes, I agree with that. I would like to add up for Majandalalat. Many people say, who you are, what is communication skills teaching you? Why you know everything except yourself?
Oh,
It's true.
That's a joke. Communicator, I mean, communicator is the one who deliver, who convey the message, right? So meaning that communicator is using communication process. We use communication process as a tool to convey some of the key message that being assigned to the particular target or for the specific objective. So meaning that the communicator they need to they need to understand that we are studying the arts and science of tool to
Yeah.
communicate with human being.
Mm.
We are not like a duck เขาบอกว่านักนิเทศเป็นเป็ด no we are เป็นเป็ด in kinds of message because we need to use เครื่องมือการสื่อสาร we need to use communication as a tool to tackle in any particular issue for example like political communication we use communication to convey the politics message marketing communication we use communication tool to convey marketing issue medical communication we use communication tool to convey the message of medical to the patient kind of that so meaning that communication is the interdisciplinary interdisciplinary is a cross knowledge but we need to have our expertise we need to know what exactly communication have to be trained so we have skill communication is skill and arts that could be trained and then communication need to have its own sign we need to know the audience behavior we need to know the human behavior we need to know the cultural of each kind of that we need to know kinds of human being so that is the reason why at the fundamental of communication or the student need to study about human communication what that mean I would like to ask you one question there is Hong Beng there is even Steve Jobs that's possible already even Kun Thaksin Shinawat they're saying that no need to go to the fortune teller no need to go to the fortune teller ไม่จำเป็นต้องไปหาหมอดู we can say that you will be success or not if you have this kind of communication that is mentioned in the theory of human communication in human communication there is about 4 or 5 types of communication the first one is intrapersonal communication intrapersonal communication การสื่อสารภายในตน intrapersonal communication like you meditate you play you plan you planning something you writing diary you planning something you kind of that so that is สื่อสารภายในตน intrapersonal communication and the second one is interpersonal communication second. The third one is group communication. The fourth one is kind of organizational communication. The fifth one is like international communication or cross-cultural communication. So what is Khong Beng or Steve Jobs said? Which type of communication that if that human being has, they will be really successful. If, for example, if Mr. Wala, Koni, or Suchat has that particular communication, he will be surely successful. What is that communication? You know? ถ้ามนุษย์คนไหนมีการสื่อสารประเภทไหนนะ Which one, Suchat?
I think interpersonal.
Interpersonal communication, like V4, V5, we have interpersonal. Mr. Wala and Suchat has interpersonal communication. Our group, we have group communication. Your answer is interpersonal communication, network communication. Like Mr. Steve Jobs saying that we need to be the networking human in this 21st century. We cannot be the island man. We need to have a network. So Mr. Suchat say interpersonal communication. Who else? What type of communication that will make people success? Kun Wala. Could be anything. What?
Professor.
Yes.
Huh?
I think on of your topic on 5 topics we have
Or
to
5 communication, but the most inferent. Even Khong Beng for the 1,000 years back, he's saying that if you have this type of communication very clear, surely that you will be success.
intra communication, interpersonal.
Intrapersonal communication.
If you clear with yourself, you clear with another person.
Okay.
เข้าใจ
ตัวนี้
ตัวเองก่อน intra
Yes, that is the theory that even the Westerner who write up the theory of human communication, saying that if anyone that have a very clear interpersonal communication, they're saying that, okay, I make decision to study this program. I will finish it in 1.5 years. I will get honor degree from that. I will be the great communicator. I will be the professional communicator in 1.5 years. This kind that you talk, you clear, you tell, you commit to yourself. So that's why since we have a class in the first week up to this week, you never miss the class kind of that. You try to develop yourself. You talk to yourself that within the first semester, I will talk English very fully. The first year you talk fully, kind of that you talk, you plan, and then like the Japanese kid in the school, that we have to diary of the kid, right? When you see Japanese, mostly they will have a notebook and a pencil or a pen. And in the kindergarten school, that we have two diary or 2 notebook. I went to the international school of them, and then one diary is kept with the teacher, and one diary the student have to carry to home, and then the parent have to check it. The parent and the teacher have to work together and see the behavior of the student. For example, like today, Connie, เด็กหญิง Connie, what you want to learn today? Connie said, I want to draw a flower. I want to draw a tree butterfly. I want to have a pink flower or kind of that. Okay. And then Connie will explain why she need the flower, why she need the pink kind of that. So the teacher write it down. Connie write it down. And then by the end of the day, the teacher will note down and talk with Connie, and Connie say planning in the morning that she will draw the two flower, but she can draw only one, for example. The teacher will ask, but you can draw only one. What's up? What your plan for tomorrow? You will then, and Connie say, tomorrow I will compensate. I will draw 3 more or 2 more, kind of that. And then the student carry this notebook to the parent. The parent will have a check, and before the kid going to bed, the parent have to talk with the kid that, hey, baby, tomorrow what you plan to do? What is your success for today? What is your happy today? What is your unhappy for today? Kind of that. And then the kid, you saying that I plan to draw 2 flowers, but I can do only one because kind of that. And what you plan to do tomorrow, the kid will explain and then write it down. And then tomorrow the kid carry this diary to the teacher. And then the teacher try to facilitate environment, mood and tone to make the creativity, to make the learning process to that kid, kind of that. So this is really focused on intrapersonal communication. You plan, you follow the plan, you create the positive environment to make it real making, kind of that. So this is the global, even the long time ago that Khổng Chứ saying that if anyone has commit to themselves, like if you have a try ถ้ายังมีความพยายาม even สวรรค์ or นรก cannot prevent you that so meaning that really is sometimes it can prove even though the western and the east, the west and the east, the south and the north, kind of that. So this is the reason why by the end of this master, we invite Professor Jude because he has very high experiences in ASEAN to meet you all. And then after that, you have the lab up together. Yes. Suchat, you have any reflection? Normally the answer from the class will be interpersonal communication, because people saying that I need to have a network, I can be the parliament member because I have a lot of network. My daddy have a network. My mommy has a network, kind of that. So that is interpersonal communication การสื่อสารเพื่อสร้างความสัมพันธ์ but if you have a very good interpersonal communication, but you lost yourself, you're not clear who you are, so you lost direction. That's it, right? So you have to start from inner first, and then the inner will be power out, and then that can direct your life. Yes. Okay, I think that tonight is quite a time. Any reflection? Ajahn Pami, you have any reflection? Jandalalat, Chris?
I think we have done pretty well tonight, and the presentation that Dr. Jude gave is like giving the ground or the foundations about communication theories, and to help our students to understand more, and then we can discuss further from that, because at the end of the day, I mean, if we must not forget that this is like a communications for ASEAN, right? Within ASEAN. And communication is really the skills, and to be master it, we just have to practice and keep learning and using it. We learn from our failure as well, so just keep practicing it and use it, and then the more you use it, the more you understand, and then you will be like become a professional at the end of the day. So please just don't give up. And I think I feel like we understand better, get the better pictures of what the communications and its relevant theory is. Of course, there will be a lot more theories coming up because theory is also developing and it has been challenging all the time. In the next 10 years, there will be the new theories coming up, but then it's evolving process, and communication is the process as we discussed before. So just stay alert and then just like I keep practicing, and I'm sure like next week we will meet Dr. Jude again, right? And then we go to more in-depth discussion. So it's like I'm just checking how many sessions that we are going to meet before the student have to enter into the exam. We are in August right now.
Yeah. For next Sunday it will be 9, right? So we meet Dr. Jude. He will make the scenario and then conclusion about intercultural communication, because ASEAN is very dominant in cultural communication. And then after that, Tandalalat will wrap up some topic to you in the I think the August 15, I think. I will resend it.
16.
Yeah, and then like after August 15 will be mine. I will make some wrap up for you all, and then after that, I think that we will make you. We will give you some time for your own reflection, for your own reading, for your own study. That's it. And then our exam will be 12 and 13. That's it.
Okay.
May I ask
Then,
question,
and then,
please?
yes, please.
Could you please give us a guideline examination, because we would like to read comprehensive all of the subject. We would like to focus that we have to read and conclude it. Yes.
Yes. I think that actually I need to check the schedule with Chandalalat first, but about her convenient time. But next week after Dr. Jude will give you some idea about that, and then the clear schedule, and then we can follow that schedule.
Yeah.
Okay.
And any suggestions? Any suggestions for reading the subjects from the computer online? Any suggestions?
Any
comments?
next week let me recall back what we have talked among the committee about this. I have to get back and then I will inform you all. Still a lot of time. Yeah, don't worry about that. We need to make education to be edutainment. No need to be serious. No need to be worry. Right, Connie? You look so serious for tonight. What's up? What happened up? Huh?
Connie looks tired.
Huh?
Little exhausted. I'm still concerned about examination like Kunmara.
No. Don't worry about that. The first semester will be like a bonus, like Chandalalat.
Yes.
It's an adjustment, right? Okay. So next week I will prepare for you. I will recheck the information and get back to you. Don't worry, just life is so short, just make it happy. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Okay,
So,
for tonight.
Some people, my friends ask me, is 100% online learning really for our course? That I told them that it's 1% learning online, but it's just for examination why you cannot examination online.
Actually, we plan to do that to be 100% online, but the Ministry of University not allow because by the law we cannot provide for that because they're saying that it will be not credible enough. So they're saying that at the beginning years, if you can prove that you can make it more credible, so the law will be approved. Yeah. So that's the big point that we have, but it's mostly online because the score is 70%. The final exam just only 30%. So very least score. Yeah.
Yes, because I advise my Philippine and Vietnam friends to participate and to view the live in the Facebook, and just only things they mention about the examinations, not go to Thailand,
Yeah.
but register to examination here is very expensive too. So in
Yeah.
they still consider.
Yeah. So I think that it should not be expensive like that, but the university is saying that we have to pay a lot to the ambassador, and especially in abroad, the cost of living is quite high. That's it. That's it. So yeah, thanks so much to invite some friend to study with us, so we will have more friends to study among us, right? Okay.
Because
We have a
we
lot of the Philippines know who interest in our program, but they're saying that the tuition fee is quite expensive for them because the government of the Philippines they subsidize the tuition fee, but in Thailand, the government is not subsidize it, so that's why it's more expensive than the Philippines. Have that. Okay, but I think that it's quite moderate because our system, I mean our Thai system is like this, no? Actually, we used to have our international consultant that set the tuition fee to be only 100,000 baht. 100,000 baht, 100,000 baht per program. But the university is saying that it's very similar to the Thai program. So that's why they have to make it a little bit add up, kind of that. Anyhow, time is really fly, is we are actually, if no COVID, you already enter the second semester, and then in the second semester you have to do your thesis and then thesis writing and then finish. So you need to really prove yourself that to be the master of communication, you need to
yes,
be talkative, Connie, talkative, talk more. Okay, so chat, okay. Albert, okay, bye
I
bye for
am
tonight.
okay.
Lalat, and three of you. Thank you. Pami, are you there?
I think she's maybe gone. I'm not sure.
Gone, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, bye bye. See you around. สวัสดีค่ะ สวัสดี
Thank you
ค่ะ
so much, Pradita. Don't give up. Good night.
Good night. Good night.